Is ugly Netagiri and politics spoiling India's amazing historic moment? Has the landing of the Vikram on the surface of the moon been tarnished and damaged by the juvenile crossfire between the Congress and the BJP? Why is the Congress busy applauding only Pandit Nehru by impulse after the successful landing of the Chandrayaan 3 on the surface of the moon? So many questions, but so few surprises over how our political class has tarnished what should have been a pure, unadulterated day of joy for every Indian over the success of our scientific community and specifically ISRO. I'm Shiv. I'm going to be asking those questions. I'm going to be busting some myths that have been coming in from the outside as well. Thanks as always for making India Today the most watched channel in the country. It means everything to us. Here are the headlines. Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping shake hands on the BRICS stage in Johannesburg. Will the Chinese president come to Delhi for the G20 summit early next month? The suspense continues. No bilateral between the two leaders at BRICS. Hours after Chandrayaan's lander Vikram touches down on the moon, rover Pragyan takes a walk on the lunar surface. First images on India Today. The exploration has begun. The 14-day countdown of the program begins. Monsoon wreaks havoc in Himachal's Kulu. 7 multi-story buildings crash down as the landslide hits this famous hill station. Has Putin's nemesis been bumped off? Wagner mercenary chief Prigozhin reportedly dies in a jet aircraft crash. Wagner chief's name in the jet's passenger list that crashed north of Moscow. Big setback for chess prodigy Pragyan. Magnus Carlsen wins first game of the tiebreaker. Prag must win the second. When the Vikram lander kissed the surface of the moon, celebrations erupted, unsurprisingly, not just at ISRO, but all parts of the country and indeed in the hearts of Indians all across the world. But the Congress party, the party that was in power when India became independent, a party that was in power for a long time after independence as well, has decided to devote much of its gratitude today, especially on social media, to crediting Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the Prime Minister of the country and most certainly an icon of the Congress party. What has resulted in is a credit war over who built ISRO, who shaped the space program, and an ugly crossfire between the Congress and the BJP. A credit war has erupted between the two parties over the advancements in the country's space technology during their respective tenures. It has descended into allegations and counter-allegations, who created ISRO and who has damaged it. While most leaders celebrated the feat, the Congress repeatedly, in tweet after tweet, post after post, decided that it was only going to thank Jawaharlal Nehru, who laid the foundation stone of space science, which is now world famous. Of course, Congress leaders, including Sonia Gandhi, applauded ISRO and its scientists, but a bulk of the gratitude, of the applause and the credit was placed firmly at the door of Jawaharlal Nehru. The Congress, in its tweet, mentioned that Nehru's scientific outlook and vision laid the foundation of Indian space research, and Chandrayaan 3's success is because of his early efforts. However, the BJP was quick to respond. The party tweeted a photograph comparing their tweet with the Congress party's tweet. The BJP, on the one hand, gave credit to ISRO scientists squarely, not naming any politician there, even though the Prime Minister did participate in the function where he applauded the ISRO scientists. While the Congress party, on the other hand, gave its first credit. The first shot fired by the Congress party was to applaud Nehru and list his contributions to the space program.
चंद्रयान 3 की सफलता प्रत्येक भारतीय की सामूहिक सफलता है। हम सब के लिए गर्व की बात है। चंद्रयान 3 के माध्यम से हमने दुनिया के सामने अपनी शानदार वैज्ञानिक क्षमता का परिचय दिया है। ये उपलब्धियां पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू के विजन का प्रमाण है, जिन्होंने इस बात पर जोर दिया साइंटिफिक टेम्पर ही एक स्वतंत्र राष्ट्र के विकास की भावना को आगे बढ़ा सकता है।
इसरो की ये योजना कोई आज की नहीं है, इसे स्थापित पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू के सपने को इंदिरा जी ने किया था।
श्रेय इसरो को जाता है और श्रेय हर सरकार को जाता है जिन्होंने इसरो की मदद की, हर सरकार को जाता है जिन्होंने इसरो को सपोर्ट किया। इस सरकार को भी, नेहरू के बाद सब सरकारों को भी, क्योंकि इसरो एक ऐसी संस्था है जो किसी राजनीतिक दल से जुड़ी हुई नहीं है और ना जुड़ना चाहिए। ये एक साइंटिफिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है। श्रेय इसरो को जाता है और श्रेय हर सरकार को जाता है जिन्होंने इसरो की मदद की, हर सरकार को जाता है जिन्होंने इसरो को सपोर्ट किया। इस सरकार को भी, नेहरू के बाद सब सरकारों को भी, क्योंकि इसरो एक ऐसी संस्था है जो किसी राजनीतिक दल से जुड़ी हुई नहीं है और ना जुड़ना चाहिए। ये एक साइंटिफिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है।
एक बात कभी नहीं भूलिए, देश जागता है, जगाने वाला होना चाहिए। और नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जिस तरह से वैज्ञानिकों को कहा, जाओ चंद्रमा पर पहुंचो, मैं तुम्हारे पीछे खड़ा हूं। एक बार असफलता हुई फिर लगो, यही तो भारत है। तो मैं आपसे एक ही शब्द कहूंगा, न्यूक्लियर बम बनाने की तो क्षमता थी, अवसर मिला क्या? मुझे बताइए। अटल जी ने दिया। सेना को सीमा पार जा करके आतंकवादियों के हौसले पस्त करने की क्षमता थी, अवसर किसने दिया? भारत के वैज्ञानिकों में सब क्षमता है, अवसर। ये अवसर तब होता है, देश जागता है, जगाने वाला होना चाहिए। इसीलिए प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का भी अभिनंदन।
बिल्कुल तरस आता है। जिसने पहली ईंट डाली, यानी कि नींव रखी, उससे लेकर के जिसके दौर में फीता कटा, सबको क्रेडिट दीजिए, लेकिन क्रेडिट सबसे पहले उन वैज्ञानिकों को दीजिए जिनकी तस्वीरें मैं कम देख रहा हूं। बाकी दुनिया भर की तस्वीरें मैं देख रहा हूं, लेकिन वो पूरी टीम आज की हीरो है। चुनावी राजनीति में इसको डालना, पॉलिटिकल स्टेटमेंट देना, कोई कर रहा हो, आज उन वैज्ञानिकों को सामने रखिए, पूरा देश गर्व से कहे।
How not just Mission Moon, but the space science of this country was floundered and played with. I don't want to get into that dirty politics today. How people try to get benefit out of it, but I think rise above all this. Take pride in being an Indian. All scientists are my scientists. Satish Sharma, Ramesh Malhotra are all our people. All the and Nambi Narayan was also ours, by the way, if they have forgotten. So I'm just reminding them. And I think the Prime Minister of this country, who stood by our scientists 4 years ago, when world declared Chandrayaan 2 to be a failure, he not only funded Chandrayaan 3 immediately, rise above petty politics, give credit to Tiranga.
Now, the very nature of space science in any country, and especially India, is that successive governments do work, and then successive governments that come after them build on that work. Space science is supposed to be bipartisan, but this ugly credit war has descended into a truly unseemly crossfire between the Congress and the BJP, with the Congress also playing its part by only and only crediting Nehru right at the outset. Now take a look at this crossfire. I want to just deconstruct it a little bit so our viewers know what our public representatives are up to. The Congress says ISRO is the success of Nehru's vision. First thing they said, BJP says UPA delayed the Chandrayaan 2 mission. The Congress says ISRO's foundation was laid by the Congress party. Obviously it was. The BJP says the Congress has ignored space missions for 50 years and the real successes have only come now. The Congress says credit must go to ISRO scientists. The BJP says the Congress has disrespected scientists like Nambi Narayan with false espionage cases. So who are they to talk about respect for ISRO scientists? So that's where things have descended to at this point of time. I want to go across to our guests at this time because no one had hoped that something like this would happen on a day of joy, on a day of celebration for all Indians, because Tehseen Poonawalla is with me. He's a political analyst. Neeti Jain is with the BJP. Good to have you both. Thank you for your time. First of all, right at the outset, congratulations to you and to all Indians, on an achievement that makes all of us proud and I'm sure unites us all. But us being a vibrant democracy and in a noisy election year, it is only to be expected that we're going to see legacy wars, credit wars, who did more things for ISRO, etc. But Tehseen, the fact that the Congress party right at the outset, the first tweet that they put out, or social media post that they put out, was this kind of laundry list of achievements or contributions of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru to the space program, and that's the reason why Chandrayaan 3 was a success. And just one little disclaimer, I personally believe Nehru's contribution to shaping our space program is beyond doubt and should be beyond politics as well. But for that first credit to go to Nehru by the Congress party, it reeks of, being defensive as far as ISRO is concerned.
Thank you, Shiv. Thank you for having me on the show. And at the onset, many, many congratulations to you, the India Today team, all your viewers and all of us. And like you rightly said, some things are beyond politics. We can agree to disagree on everything, except some things which are national interest. And like you rightly in your introduction said, India's space program, and let me add to it, and because you are somebody who covers it and I have a lot of respect for you, India's nuclear program. These are two success stories of various governments. The nuclear program from Indira Ji to Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and Pokhran was done hidden from US satellites when Vajpayee Ji was Prime Minister. These are India's success stories. The first three words of our constitution are we the people. This is our success. Not any Prime Minister, not any president, not any opposition leaders are. So I really hope our political leadership, bipartisan, stops taking success of our scientists. They must stop doing that immediately. Whether it is, and I am a Congress supporter, I'm putting that out, I vote for the Congress, whether it is this desperateness to show, look, we set the foundation, of course the Congress set the foundation, no doubt about it, or whether it is the Prime Minister coming on the screen or whatever, that happened at that point. He is the Prime Minister, he is going to come on the screen, as Siddaramaiah will go. Let's stop this, number one. Number two, let me go a little step further. I think this is a great achievement for India. Where do we go from here? As an Indian, and what really intrigues me is, yes, Nehru ji set a base, we've today achieved something, and all prime ministers, including Modi ji, gets credit. Today, are we building a quantum computer? Shiv, I say this because as an Indian, I'm extremely concerned. We are falling, at least if we are not falling back, we are not moving ahead at the same pace. We are not building a quantum computer.
I'll come to that point, Tehseen. You're making 2 points. I'll come back to that point. You make an extremely important point because the energy spent in the tutu meme over credit, etc., is something that could easily be spent on doing the next big thing for India. I agree with you. But let's just focus just for a moment on the politics because these are, after all, big parties, big elected representatives saying these things about each other on a day of joy for all Indians. Neeti Jain, what do you have to say about the Congress crediting Nehru for it? The BJP, I notice, has also been attacking the Congress saying, look at you guys, all you can do is think about Nehru on a day like this and ignore our scientists. They're pointing at you and saying, why did the Prime Minister have to be there on a day like this? Tehseen, I think, very sensibly says, he's the Indian Prime Minister, of course he's going to be there.
Shiv, I think it's not just the BJP. I think it's the entire country on a day as momentous as it was. I think all of us were just celebrating, and it was just the Congress that comes out, okay, congratulations, but it was Nehru. I think it was on one of your shows a little while earlier, where you had spoken about an entire list of initiatives that was simply named after Nehru, and it took you quite some time to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is what the Congress party has been doing all its while, and today they have a problem if a prime minister, the head of this country, and also the minister who is in charge of the space and technology initiatives in this country has even spoken or addressed the country about such a huge initiative, and that is their problem. So I think it was just being very petty and a little funny also, because this is not, as a country, we need to celebrate what we have achieved, and it is not a small milestone that we've taken. The initiatives that have been taken by the Prime Minister have gotten us a lot of startups. They have gotten us a lot of foreign investment simply because of the initiatives that ISRO has taken in the past 9 years.
Tehseen, do you think the day should have just been devoted to the scientists, to crediting the scientists, thanking them, applauding them? All of this could have happened maybe a day or a week later.
Yes, in an ideal world, it should, but we are a democracy.
Yeah.
And in a democracy, people are going to speak, people are going to make political points, no matter how momentous the occasion are. So that will happen. We can't stop that. We shouldn't even really stop that, because that takes away the uniqueness of being in India. We're not a China, thankfully.
True.
We are in India. So that's the great thing about this amazing country. But let me address the second thing, because Niti moved to startup, something that I'm involved in. I'm in the startup business. We have a startup mentality. The government doesn't have a policy. Look, Niti, I'm not being critical. He's my prime minister. I oppose him, but he's prime minister. I'm in the fintech space, in blockchain. We don't have a policy. I am forced to plead my partners, hold on. We can register a company in Dubai in 20 minutes. I'm not making this up, Niti. We can register a company 20. We don't have a policy in India. Do we have a policy on quantum computers? We don't have that. What is our policy with blockchain? Tell me, Niti.
But Tehseen, what does that have to do with this?
I'll tell you what this has to do. Like Prime Minister, just Niti, 2 minutes. Niti, 2 minutes. Niti, give me a minute.
Let Tehseen pose his question.
Let me frame my question. From Prime Minister Nehru to Prime Minister Modi, we had a continuity of a big achievement that we made in our space program or in our nuclear program. Where is your next idea going to come from? It's going to be quantum computing. That's going to safeguard your space security. Quantum computing, we're not there. We're not moving there. Why, Niti? Explain that to me. We should have taken that next leap. Tell me, Niti, what is our policy with future businesses? We don't have an idea.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is, it's not merely enough to just credit our scientists. What has to happen is protect our scientists, help them go ahead further.
But that's what the BJP is accusing the Congress of, Tehseen. That's one of the things the BJP is accusing the Congress of. They're saying that the Congress has actually damaged ISRO rather than, build it up. That's a specific allegation being made by Amit Malviya and others.
That's a political statement. They can't back it up.
If you just give me 30 seconds, I can explain it to you.
Yeah.
You throw our scientists, just Niti. Just 10 seconds. You throw scientists under the bus in the vaccines.
The point is, if you have personal problems, if you have personal issues, that's a different thing. But there are 150.
Yeah, Niti, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do we have Niti? Okay, I think we've lost that link with Niti. Tehseen, you want to complete your point? We'll get Niti back then. Yeah.
Even with the vaccines, okay, these are India's vaccines, right? What did the government do in the Supreme Court? It went and gave an affidavit in written, or if you, instead of giving an indemnity, it gave an affidavit in the Supreme Court, you can sue these vaccine companies. Secondly, with regards to the Hyderabad-based vaccine company, they didn't even fight WHO.
Tehseen, you're making it about a lot of different things here. You're broadening it up.
I'm talking about scientists.
I get what you're saying.
I'm saying you've got to protect your scientists. You don't protect your scientists.
Okay, let Niti respond to your first question. Yeah, Niti, go ahead.
So all I was saying was, no matter what your personal issue is, there are 150 space startups that have come up, and they have contributed in some way or the other in launching and landing this Chandrayaan 3. So all of them have been involved in this. Out of the 424 foreign satellites launched, 389 have been launched in the past 9 years. Before 2014, there were 1.2 missions per year ka average, and after that it has been 5.7 missions per year. So there has to be a policy initiative that has been taken by the current government. I am not saying the scientists are not responsible. They totally are. And I think they get all the respect and all the hard work that they've done. But like the army that you questioned, there has to be a policy, a government driven by policy that is guiding them and backing them in whatever they are doing. And ISRO, you can say that Nehru ji ne pehli eent rakhi thi and all of those things, but what after that? In 62, Pakistan launched a satellite from Pakistan. We launched our first satellite in 75 and we launched it in Russia, not in India. Why? If you are going to credit Nehru, also credit him for the oxide that happened, also credit him for Kashmir.
Okay, no,
also
we're not going to go into all of those things. Yeah. Okay,
So
Tehseen, you want to respond? The short point is, if you're going to credit Nehru on social media as being the real reason why Chandrayaan 3 landed on the moon, then also bring up all the other things. There are many things that didn't happen for ISRO.
Well, I
and
just
they have
read
This whole game is ugly. That's the point.
They have a right.
Tehseen.
Let me say, they have a right to, and they have a right to. And again, I said, we are a democracy.
Yeah.
Please accuse Nehru. Please, you have a right to. But let me ask you about Prime Minister. The HEC.
Niti, let him finish. Niti, let Tehseen finish. We can only hear one of you at a time. Tehseen.
Niti, with respect, please discredit Nehru, credit Nehru, do what you want. Nehru is no longer amongst us. He's no longer in our midst. Hindsight is always 2020. But our current Prime Minister, if we credit him for ISRO, we should. Then HECD PSU, whose engineers were responsible in the Chandrayaan launch, were not paid for 3 months. By that logic, there you say, oh, that's a PSU, that's independent, their Prime Minister is not responsible. You can't do that, Niti. You cannot keep interrupting me. It's not Republic of Nonsense. It's
Niti,
India.
1 second. Let him finish. I'll give you time. Let him finish. I'll give you time.
Please allow me to make my point. It is not a fake news. We are not talking about the scientists. We are talking about the engineers. Please understand what I'm trying to say. The engineers of HEC, a Ranchi-based PSU, which is a government-owned, public-owned company, were not paid their salaries for 3 months. That is not disputable. If we have to credit the Prime Minister for what our scientists did, rightfully so, why should the same Prime Minister's government not be held responsible for engineers? We can't just talk about our scientists and not talk about other professionals like engineers.
But the government has not taken credit for it, Tehseen. Where has the government taken credit for this?
BJP.
The social,
BJP.
all the social media out there shows pictures of the Pragyan rover, the lander. The first tweet put out by the BJP didn't have a picture of any politician. It's the Congress that's talking all about Nehru. The BJP is just talking about ISRO.
When BJP leaders or spokespersons like the very erudite Niti credit the Prime Minister for a policy which rightfully he should be credited, then the same policy which does not pay engineers should be, the question should have asked the Prime Minister.
Answer that, Niti. Answer that. That's a specific, that's specific because there are many issues around that as well. Yes, Niti.
So the point, Shiv, is everybody was congratulating ISRO, everybody was celebrating as a country. It was the Congress party that came out and said, "Ye to Nehru ji ne kiya tha." Whatever is that, so everybody is going to respond to that. No, ये तो उड़ता हुआ तीर आप लोगों ने लिया है भाई. What has the BJP anything to do with it? The BJP is going to respond if you're going to credit everything to one person. And I'm more than willing, you take the credit, but you take the blame for everything else that has been done as well.
Look,
that's what the current government is doing, and we have everything to show on the international and the national stage, everything that has been done, and that is something, and I appreciate Tehseen has been accepting or kind of being kind about.
No, Tehseen's one of the most sensible people on TV. I always say this, but I'd like to end because I'm almost out of time by just saying that certain things must be above politics. I believe that things like rape, things like crime, things like our space program, strategic affairs, defense, questions must be asked of our political powers and the governments that be, and that's what we do here in India today. But certain things must be above politics. There can't be point scoring over people who are without a doubt legendary. Who can argue that Nehru is not legendary? Who can argue that Nehru did not have a seminal part to play in birthing India's space program? Obviously, there's a context to how defensive the Congress appears to be right now because the Nehru Memorial was recently renamed and therefore the Congress feels a little slighted and perhaps needed to talk a little bit more about Nehru. But like Tehseen says, that's democracy. And in an election year, all of this is going to be amplified all the more. The truth, when you boil all of this politics away, is all of us Indians have every reason to be very, very proud with what ISRO achieved yesterday. The men and women are all heroes and they deserve our unadulterated congratulations. Thank you very much to both Niti and to Tehseen for being with me. That was a very sensible discussion that we had that goes beyond just our space program, because Chandrayaan 3 is on the moon, viewer. That's the bottom line. The Pragyan rover, as we showed you in those pictures yesterday, has exited the Vikram lander. I cannot wait for those first pictures taken by Pragyan of the lander once it is completely, at a certain distance from Vikram. Hopefully those images will come sometime today or perhaps over the weekend. What's more, Chandrayaan has already started beaming back data from the moon. The experiment has begun. The moment of discovery is here for India. Take a look.
India does the moonwalk. Hours after Chandrayaan's 3-lander module Vikram touched down on the lunar surface at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the moon rover Pragyan rolled out of Vikram on Thursday. ISRO confirmed the breakthrough, saying India took a walk on the moon. The Pragyan rover is the first of its kind to be deployed to the moon's south pole. Over the next 14 Earth days, which equals 1 lunar day, Pragyan will cover moon surface as low as 1 centimeter per second. It is equipped with a variety of instruments, including a camera, a spectrometer and a magnetometer. The rover will conduct experiments to study the moon surface, including its composition, mineralogy and history. It will be powered by solar panels and will communicate with the Chandrayaan 3 orbiter.
The sun set at the end of the 14th day, we will have night falling in and the temperature will drop very drastically for the next 14 days. And once after the 14 days, most of the liquid inside, like the propellants would have frozen, some of the electronics would have got damaged, the battery also would have gone dead. So all these are possible. But the contrary is also equally possible. So we will wait for that remaining 14 days, like at the end of 28th day when the sun comes up, maybe a few days later, we will again check whether it is in good condition.
Before images of Pragyan emerged, ISRO had released picture of the lander Vikram on the moon, the photograph. The image from the landing imager camera shows a glimpse of the landing site, including a portion of the spacecraft's landing leg and its shadow. These 4 images were the first set sent by the lander's horizontal velocity camera as it was nearing the surface of the moon. As India became the first country to land on the moon's south pole, several world leaders congratulated Prime Minister Modi for Chandrayaan's 3 success at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg.
Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, I asked him this morning whether the lunar module is still firmly on the ground on the moon, and he said yes. So yesterday we congratulated India for landing a lunar module on the moon.
As world hails India, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar shared a photograph of Prime Minister Modi reading a local daily in Johannesburg. The newspaper carried the headline, "Modi's India out of the world." Prime Minister Modi has dedicated Chandrayaan's 3 success to scientists across the globe.
इस सफलता को एक देश की सीमित सफलता के रूप में नहीं, लेकिन पूरी मानव जाति की एक महत्वपूर्ण सफलता के रूप में स्वीकार किया जा रहा है। ये हम सभी लोगों के लिए अत्यंत गर्व का विषय है और भारत के वैज्ञानिकों को पूरे विश्व की तरफ से अभिनंदन का अवसर है।
The successful landing of Chandrayaan 3 makes India the 4th country to soft land on the moon, after the United States, the Soviet Union and China.
लैंडर मॉड्यूल पूरी तरह से सेफली और सॉफ्टली चंद्रमा की सतह पे लैंड हो चुका है।
India aims to embark on a first mission to study the sun. Mission Aditya will launch in September. The moonwalk is only the beginning. Bureau Report, India Today.
And let's never forget that as we applaud the scientists, the heroes of ISRO, the men and women, their families have stood steadfastly behind them. The families who've had to see these ISRO heroes spend hours, days, weeks, months, perhaps even years away from their family to make sure that India's space dreams come true. We salute each and every ISRO family, those behind the scenes making their contribution to the Vikram landing on the surface of the moon. Watch this report.
lander module.
These are the heroes of India's moon mission. India and the world are celebrating their historic success. Soon after Chandrayaan's 3 successful landing on the moon's south pole. This old, undated video of the ISRO chief, Somnath, shaking a leg has gone viral. One would hope that this is how Team Chandrayaan would have celebrated on Wednesday night. But no.
This is a technical event in which that we were doing certain work all through yesterday night, and we were here even after the landing for hours together to achieve something. So we have to catch some sleep. That's all I did yesterday.
It gives me immense satisfaction on achieving this goal as a project director of this mission.
As billions of Indians were on the edge of their seats, the families of ISRO scientists were as nervous. Project director P. Veeramuthuvel's father was glued to his television set. He got extremely emotional watching the Vikram lander successfully touching down on the moon's surface. Another ISRO scientist, Parvati, received a rousing welcome from her neighbors as she got back home. And just like them, India too is over the moon. Bureau Report, India Today.
One of the things you can always count on to happen when there's a successful Indian space mission like the one yesterday is a total meltdown in a tiny but very vocal section of the United Kingdom. A motley bunch of British far-right politicians, journalists and commentators who you'll see immediately triggered while India is celebrating its success in space. It's happened many times before, and it definitely happened when the Chandrayaan 3 was launched last month, and boy did it happen yesterday when the Vikram touched down on the moon. The contents of the tweets you see on the screen that are part of this meltdown are all largely the same. They question why the United Kingdom is continuing to provide aid to India when India is killing it in space and clearly doesn't need handouts from any other country. Many, including me, have reacted to some of these tweets with sarcasm and anger, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But first, the facts about UK aid to India. It's true, the UK does provide millions of pounds to India. I don't know whether to call it aid or not, and you'll see why in a moment. The last recorded figure was $2.3 billion between 2016 and 2021. That's confirmed. But is this really aid? Is this really a handout? Is this really charity? Is this the generosity of the United Kingdom? Or are these funds specifically to further Britain's own interests? Let me quote from the March 2023 report of the UK's Independent Commission for Aid Impact, which reports to British Parliament on the issue of aid provided by that country. The report says that this £2.3 billion to India supports a range of UK-India roadmap objectives under the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, serving as a tool for UK foreign policy, diplomatic and trade objectives. In other words, this $2.3 billion is money being spent by the UK to further their national interests. British aid to India was to have wound down by around 2015, but hasn't for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is that the aid simply isn't aid anymore, but money of a very different nature and purpose. Let me explain. In other words, according to this report that we have in our hands, the UK no longer provides traditional aid to India as we know it, but provides loans and equity investments to the Indian private sector that bring a financial return to the UK. In other words, not aid, but investment. But hold on, it gets better. Of the £2.3 billion paid by the UK in terms of aid, as they call it, between 2016 and 2021, £129 million was from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, or FCDO, which, as per this report in the UK, generates returns, in principle, saving British taxpayer money. This organization, the FCDO, has been quoted in the media as saying that since 2015, the UK has given no financial aid to the government of India, and that most of its funding is focused on business investments which help create new markets and jobs for the United Kingdom as well as India. Again, of the 2.3 billion pounds of aid between 2016 and 2021, 1 billion pounds of this is investments by an organization called British International Investment, or BII. This report confirms that this portfolio of investments in India has been generating returns directly for the UK taxpayer. All of the other so-called aid is in financial institutions and research projects and NGOs. None of it is charity or aid. All of it directly benefits the United Kingdom's interests. The UK is profiting, in other words, from the money it puts into India and it calls aid. But of course, monetary profit isn't the only compelling factor for aid of this kind. Because post-2016, the UK found itself floundering post-Brexit and needed to independently rebuild and sustain its engagement in India. The reason for this meltdown, which I have to admit is in a very tiny section of Britain, is therefore mindless to say the least. India doesn't need this aid and in fact has since 2012 communicated quite clearly that this British aid makes no difference to India's ambitions and interests. That alone is proof that this aid is being pushed by the UK to further the UK's own diplomatic and trade interests, a recognition that it cannot afford to weaken its ties in India and must have investments in one of the world's fastest growing economies. Not aid, investment, especially at a time when the UK is headed into a recession, record inflation and financial stress. As a final point, and this is more emotion really, it's a little rich to see a bunch of privileged white men talk about aid to India while continuing to live a life that's still in some way or other afforded by the centuries of plunder Britain subjected India to. Is there an estimate for how much the UK owes India for everything it took from here? Just something to think about. Thanks for listening. Very quick break here on 5 Live. On the other side, did Putin get Wagner mercenary chief Vladimir Prigozhin bumped off? Well, the Russian president's nemesis died in a mysterious jet crash. What's the truth about what happened? That's next.
This is a big year for India because of the G20 presidency. The Prime Minister has spoken again and again over the last few weeks about making India the third largest economy in the world and to achieve economic leadership by 2047, because this is India Mission 2047, which is the broad overarching theme of the India at 100 Summit, and looking forward to seeing you in the capital on the 26th of August for the Business Today India at 100 Summit.
टीम चंद्रयान को, इसरो को और देश के सभी वैज्ञानिकों को जी जान से बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं, जिन्होंने इस पल के लिए वर्षों तक इतना परिश्रम किया है। उत्साह, उमंग, आनंद और भावुकता से भरे इस अद्भुत पल के लिए मैं 140 करोड़ देशवासियों को भी कोटि कोटि बधाइयां देता हूं। मेरे परिवारजनों, हमारे वैज्ञानिकों के परिश्रम और प्रतिभा से भारत चंद्रमा के उस दक्षिणी ध्रुव पर पहुंचा है, जहां आज तक दुनिया का कोई भी देश नहीं पहुंच सका।
It is truly a momentous occasion, the kind of event that happens once in a lifetime, making all Indians proud. I congratulate ISRO and everybody involved in this mission and wish them greater accomplishments ahead. The success of Chandrayaan, I believe, is also a major achievement for the whole of humankind. It shows how India has harnessed its rich traditional knowledge base along with modern science in the service of humanity.
Where did our moon come from? Well, actually, there have been several theories over many decades. Earlier versions of lunar formation theories included capture, where the moon would have been a strayed planetoid. Another version was fission, where the Earth was spinning so fast that it would have warped out of the Earth and then formed its own body. This led to our current theory, the giant impactor theory. So this collision was during the late stages of planetary formation throughout our entire solar system, when planets were still very new and very much forming. So this happened when Earth was just an embryo, a baby planet, and this was actually in a crash course collision with Theia, which is a Mars-sized planetoid. And this collision ripped apart early Earth's crust, and that crust then coalesced, it snowballed into a whole separate entity, which we now call the moon. So, where did our moon come from? Well, currently, our understanding is that the Earth had collided with a Mars-sized object named Theia. But once we send future astronauts to the lunar surface again, who knows? We may actually have a whole new theory in the coming decades.
Russia's most powerful mercenary killed. Prigozhin dies in plane crash. 2 months after his mutiny against Russian army. Biden points finger at Putin. Prigozhin death mystery.
Is this the latest and deadliest round of Russian roulette? Vladimir Prigozhin, the head of Russia's most powerful mercenary outfit, the Wagner Group, has died in a mysterious plane crash. The crash came 2 months to a day after Prigozhin had famously rebelled against the Russian government, against Putin, and had led a mutiny against the army top brass as well. The question now is, was this an accident? Was this a crash? Was it sabotage? Was Vladimir Prigozhin bumped off by Putin? All of this not being said by us. It's the buzz on the ground because of the track record and the manner in which Russia has been known how to settle scores. Take a look at this report.
Russian authorities say mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was listed as a passenger in a fatal plane crash about 2 months after the mutiny he led that brought the country into a crisis. This unverified video from a Russian news outlet is said to show the moment of the crash. Reuters used satellite and street view images to confirm the clip's location. but could not immediately confirm that Prigozhin was physically on board the aircraft. According to Russian authorities, the crash happened Wednesday evening north of Moscow, leaving no survivors. 10 people were on board the plane heading from Moscow to St. Petersburg, 3 of them crew members. State media is reporting that 8 bodies were initially found at the crash site, with search and rescue operations underway. Data from online tracker FlightRadar24.com shows a plane heading northwest and then shortly after 6 p.m., suddenly disappearing. Prigozhin soared in prominence after Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. The 62-year-old's fighters led the assault on the city of Bakhmut in the longest and bloodiest battle of the war. In June, he spearheaded a mutiny against Russia's top army brass. President Vladimir Putin said that move could have tipped the country into civil war. He was supposed to move to neighboring Belarus under an apparent deal to end the mutiny. U.S. President Joe Biden said he wasn't surprised to hear the news.
There's not much that happens in Russia that Putin's not behind. I don't know enough to know the answer.
There was no immediate comment from Russia's defense ministry or the Kremlin.
Managing editor Gaurav Sawant, who's reported from Russia, from Ukraine through the war, who has encountered the Wagner group during his reporting in Ukraine as well, is with me live. Gaurav, you know, one of the most startling thing about the reactions to Prigozhin's death in this plane crash was the total lack of surprise. Most people were not even surprised that this has happened, and that in itself was extremely telling.
Shiv, the only surprise was that he survived 2 months.
Yeah.
If it's true that indeed Yevgeny Prigozhin was on board that aircraft, which crashed rather mysteriously 100 miles north of Moscow en route St. Petersburg. The fact remains, Shiv, the dates are very, very interesting and curious. 23rd of June is when that revolt or the rebellion against Kremlin happened, and 23rd of August is when this air crash took place. Point 1. Point 2, 100 kilometers south was where the Wagner forces had reached. 100 kilometers north, according to the media there, is where this crash took place. It's not just the Wagner forces chief, but also his second in command, who were killed along with 6 other commanders. So the entire Wagner forces now is virtually headless and can either be roped into the Russian army or can be molded in any which way possible. So Dmitry Utkin was also killed in this crash. If at all this is true, that the 2 were killed in a crash, since there isn't an official confirmation, 10 bodies have been identified, but not individually identified just as yet. Point 2. Point 3, again very curious, General Armageddon or General Survokin, the Russian Air Force commander considered close to Prigozhin, he too was removed just hours before this crash. So if you join the dots, it does appear that a signal is being sent out, and the fact that the Russian president was where the Battle of Kursk had taken place in the Second World War, again, that was a signal of a counter-offensive where the Nazi forces, in fact, many argue that that Battle of Kursk was more deadly or more important than the Battle of Stalingrad. So many signals here, but no official confirmation just as yet, Shiv.
All the makings of an extremely intense spy thriller, military thriller, all the elements of a Tom Clancy novel also. It's just scary, all the Cold War elements in this. And Gaurav, remember, has reported in towns and cities where the Wagner group has operated. So he knows a thing or two about the relationship between Putin and the man who so many people around the world now believe has just been bumped off. This was no coincidence. Gaurav, stay with me. Another story I wanted to bring up for our viewers here on 5 Live is the Indian Prime Minister, who's at the BRICS summit, was on camera having a brief exchange of words with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Johannesburg. They also briefly shook hands. There was a small bit of conversation, but no bilateral. The meeting of the 2 leaders came at the sidelines of the 15th BRICS summit. Before the conference started, Prime Minister Modi and Xi were pictured having a brief conversation before taking their designated seats. They also shook hands, as you can see in this little video clip. In November last year, Modi chanced upon Xi at the G20 dinner hosted by the Indonesian president in Bali. Both the leaders had exchanged pleasantries at G20. Let me bring Gaurav back in. Gaurav, very brief handshake, a couple of words exchanged, but no bilateral. The suspense, of course, now shifts to whether China will be attending the G20. What are you hearing about what happened at BRICS, and any word on Xi coming for the G20?
Shiv, too premature on both, but the fact that you mentioned the two they shook hands even in Bali at G20, that gave an indication, because remember, even that time the government did not say much until 8 months later, and 8 months later the government did confirm that the two had a brief conversation where both Prime Minister of India and the President of China emphasized on the need to restore stability in the relationship. But the roadmap of stability is very interesting, Shiv, because India has repeatedly said that unless there is peace and tranquility at the borders and restoration of the April-May 2020 situation, this relationship cannot move forward. China, on the other hand, insists that don't let a border niggle, as China puts it. Don't let the border situation impact the overall growth of relationship. So that is where there's a major disconnect. And is there a middle ground, especially now when India, as the president of G20, would want China to be here? Now, that will be very interesting in the days ahead, because the conversations have been on, the meetings have been taking place. What was curious, Shiv, that the Chinese president was missing. He was absent from the BRICS Business Forum. And was that an indication that was being sent out? We'll know more in the days ahead. But India's diplomacy has done extremely well so far. So by all accounts, he would be there at G20. But will it lead to restoration of peace and tranquility at the border remains to be seen.
And remember, we should always dispel this myth that it's China pressuring India. India has put the same kind of pressure right back at China in eastern Ladakh and in other parts of that disputed border. And let's be very clear about it. It's not the armies of the two sides that will be able to solve this problem. It has to boil down and trickle down from the two countries' leaders, Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. And that's the reason why every little piece of body language is being ascribed with so much importance. Gaurav, thanks for that perspective here on 5 Live. Well, that's a wrap on the show. I'm going to see you at the same time tomorrow. I'm going to be leaving you with these images, however, also from BRICS. But here is Prime Minister Narendra Modi showing an utmost level of respect to the national flag. When leaders of BRICS were called to pose on stage, the national flags were kept on the ground to denote the standing position of the leaders. What did Prime Minister Modi do? He bends down, picks up the tricolour and keeps it in his pocket. Following this act, even the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa picked up the South African flag placed on the ground. It's the little things that matter.
कल के सपने पूरे करो आज। रहो एक कदम आगे तमिलनाडु मर्केंटाइल बैंक के साथ।
Our approach of one earth, one family, one future is resonating across the globe. This success belongs to all of humanity. ये दिन इस बात का प्रतीक है कि हार से सबक लेकर जीत कैसे हासिल की जाती है।
जी हाँ, आप अपने स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल पूरी तरह से सेफली और सॉफ्टली चंद्रमा की सतह पे लैंड हो चुका है। ये हम लोगों के लिए बहुत ही गर्व की बात है।
forecast now. Delhi, maximum 36 and minimum 26 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 28 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 26 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 30 and minimum 22 degrees. Chennai, maximum 32 and minimum 24 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 30 and minimum 24 degrees.